we are closing in on the last episode. In fact, we're almost to the season finale. And we're talking about Kings. Book of Kings. Now we have with us Ty Jones. And he is going to help us understand one of the least understood and least read books of the Bible. So, who was your scholar and what did you learn this week?
My scholar was Marvin Sweeney. He has a very interesting take on that of Solomon and David. He writes, although Solomon is a wise, prosperous, and pious monarch who works to ensure the welfare of his people, the critical literary framework raises questions concerning his integrity and wisdom. Ultimately, this framework judges him to have been an inadequate monarch whose lustful women, not unlike that of his father, led to his apostasy against Yahweh and the dissolution of the United Kingdom. He raises a number of reasons why, because he's kind of pointing this thing that although Solomon is wise, he's foolish. And he raises, 1 Kings chapter 3, Solomon marries the daughter of Pharaoh, of Pharaoh of Egypt. And this indicates that he obviously has like this great status throughout the entire world. But it also shows something else because Sweeney connects it with the Exodus narrative, wherein he's saying, because at this time, Pharaoh still stands for the oppression of the Israelite people. And so it's kind of strange that Solomon marries somebody who oppressed people, the Israelite people. And so Sweeney points out also when he Solomon has his very wise interaction with the women who have the child, he also says that kind of Solomon is operating outside of his role. That was the role of a chief magistrate. He's operating as a chief magistrate, and that in that particular instance should have been dealt with by the priest. So he's, in a sense, playing the role of a priest. And then, as we see later on, he points out in 1 Kings 5 that Solomon's behavior mirrors that of the Pharaoh of Egypt by imposing state slavery on his own people.
Mm-hmm. Well, this week we were also supposed to have Paulette Taylor, who, because of illness, is not able to be here. And she's reporting from the Women's Bible Commentary. And her scholar was Cameron B. R. Howard. And what you learned this week is that the Books of Kings was a collection of accounts of a system of rule based on the extraction of resources, be they agricultural, monetary, or human, from communities under its governance. The kind of system that exploits the bodies of both women and men for the service of the kingdom. The narrative shows how this resistance, how there's some resistance, but the resistance largely comes from the prophets. For instance, Elijah and Elisha, whose miracles point to an alternative reality, one governed by God, in which giving fullness rather than extraction and famine are the structures in place. Those portraits draw the narrative view away from the king and in fact focus on the prophets. For instance, she wants to remind us of the story of the prophet and the widow, destitute, whom the prophet is able to deliver. A critique is being leveled against the kings and ultimately not only about religious fidelity. In fact, in Kings we see continuity between religious fidelity and the exercise of justice. A quieter but no less fervent threat assails the imperial patriarchal system that will only yield suffering. Well, now you've told us what you learned. What questions would you ask Dr. Sweeney?
That's Dr. Sweeney. He points out about the authorship concerning Kings that some Jewish scholars credited to that of Jeremiah, but what seems to be the major consensus is that it was written by multiple authors over a period of time. There's a period, he points out, talking about David. You know, when we first see David in Kings, he personifies incompetence in a sense. He's not able to consummate his marriage. His child is trying to take over the kingdom. Nathan and Bathsheba, they, tell him that he's supposed to declare Solomon to be king. But at the end, he gives Solomon these great words of wisdom. He tells Solomon who in the kingdom he needs to deal with, needs to take care of Joab and things of this nature. And I want to raise the question, is this perhaps evidence to suggest that multiple authors worked on this particular text due to the difference of David that we see? Because, it's a pretty large parallel, to point out that. And, Sweeney points out all the folly of Solomon. So I would like to get a definition of wisdom from him and somebody who utilizes it best outside of Jesus.
Okay, Sweeney's probably not going to give you anybody that's going to be Jesus. That's good. He's probably going to say that the different depictions of David can be because of multiple authors. I think he's going to argue that you see really the rise of David, and then with David, Bathsheba, the beginning of the decline with David, and the way you've described Kings as an accurate one, that by the time you get to 1 and 2 Kings, David is able to sort of give a sort of nice closing words of advice, but he can't get anything done anymore himself. And so the disparities are really disparities in the sort of arc. That now David has become almost a King Lear figure, who early is robust, energetic, and has the sort of Spirit of God with him. But at the end is just holding court where he's not in control of much of anything.
Just holding back.
Yeah. Now your point about wisdom is a great observation. Solomon, who the canon is going to give Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, is depicted in Kings as a man who is unable to carry out his own will. And so one wonders if the King's material doesn't provide another picture to offset Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, so that even the wise have limits to their own wisdom. Because Solomon did in 1 Kings 3, he prays for wisdom.
Yeah.
God says, you prayed for the right thing, I'm going to give you wisdom. But even that special wisdom was not a wisdom so persistent to keep him from falling into, if I remember the way you said it, enslaving his own people, exogamy, marrying outside the system, and just sort of a loss of faithfulness. So it's good to pray for wisdom, it's good to get it, it's hard to keep it. Well, that about wraps up our show on Kings. Now that you know about Kings, can't wait to see our season finale, Chronicles. We'll see you then. Thank you.